The concept that your brain is capable of change at any age may feel revolutionary, but it is firmly grounded in neuroscience. This idea is called neuroplasticity, and it refers to the brain's ability to rewire itself based on experience, action, and intention. For many years, the prevailing belief in science was that after childhood, the brain became relatively fixed. We now know that this is incorrect. The brain remains plastic, malleable, throughout life. What this means is that no matter where you are in your life journey, whether you're 18 or 80, you can reshape your patterns, your thoughts, your habits, and your future. Neuroplasticity is not a vague notion of thinking positively or hoping things will change. It is a physical process, synapses firing, neurons growing or being pruned away, circuits strengthening or weakening, based on the experiences you create for yourself. Your environment plays a role, but the most important signal your brain pays attention to is behavior. When you repeat a new behavior consistently, you begin to build new neural pathways. At first, these changes may be imperceptible, but over time, repeated behaviors send a clear signal to your nervous system. This is the new normal. Reinforce this pattern. One of the most fascinating aspects of neuroplasticity is how targeted it is. The brain doesn't change everywhere at once. It adapts in very specific ways, depending on where attention and effort are applied. If you begin learning a language, for instance, the brain areas involved in language acquisition, primarily in the left hemisphere, begin to expand and show increased activity. If you train in martial arts, your motor cortex and balance circuits strengthen. The same is true for emotional regulation and resilience. If you consistently work to interrupt negative thought loops or replace reactive habits with reflective ones, the brain begins to support those changes structurally. But neuroplasticity is not always positive. It is neutral. The brain doesn't care if you're building constructive or destructive habits. It simply reinforces whatever you repeat. That's why someone who engages in constant negative self-talk, procrastination, or addiction patterns also experiences plasticity, but in ways that limit freedom and personal growth. The principle is simple: what fires together, wires together. This classic phrase from neuroscience reminds us that whatever neural circuits are repeatedly activated together become more tightly linked. In other words, the more you practice any behavior or thought pattern, good or bad, the easier it becomes to repeat it. The exciting truth is that you can intervene in this process at any time. The key is focused intention combined with action. Passive consumption, just reading, watching, or listening, isn't enough to rewire the brain. You must engage in behavior. Action, not information, is the lever that moves the nervous system. This is particularly important when you're trying to break from the past. If you've been shaped by trauma, setbacks, failure, or simply years of stagnation, those experiences may have carved deep grooves in your mental wiring. But they are not permanent. You can override them, but only by moving your body and your mind in new, purposeful ways. What's also important to understand is that neuroplasticity is more active during certain times. After emotionally intense events, for example, the brain becomes more malleable. This can be either an opportunity or a vulnerability. If you intentionally follow a difficult experience, like a breakup, a job loss, or a health scare, with a new constructive habit, the brain is more likely to embed that new behavior. This is known as plasticity windows, periods when the brain is especially receptive to change. Another such window occurs after deep focus or physical exertion, particularly when followed by rest. In these moments, changes in neural circuits are consolidated. That's why learning and recovery must go hand in hand. Sleep also plays a vital role in neuroplasticity. During deep sleep and REM sleep, the brain replays the day's patterns and determines what should be stored long term. If your goal is to reset your life, one of the most foundational steps is to prioritize sleep, because without it, even your most disciplined behaviors won't take root. In sum, the idea that you can reset your life isn't about wishful thinking. It is about learning how to harness the most powerful tool you already possess, a brain that was designed to adapt. Every step you take toward a better version of yourself sends a signal to your nervous system that change is possible. And the brain listens, not to what you say, but to what you do. So if you want to start again, if you want to break free from old patterns, you must begin with deliberate, repeated, meaningful actions. Your brain will follow, because it always does. Where you place your attention is not just a mental choice, it's a biological directive that influences how your brain prioritizes change. The human visual system plays a far more powerful role in behavior and brain function than most people realize. In fact, what you look at and how you look at it directly affects your level of focus, emotional state, and the neurochemistry that supports learning and adaptation. The visual system is deeply intertwined with the brain's attentional and arousal networks. When you narrow your gaze, focusing intently on a single object or point, your brain releases specific neurochemicals such as acetylcholine and norepinephrine. These chemicals heighten alertness, promote plasticity, and increase the likelihood that what you're doing will be remembered and repeated. It's like telling your brain, "This matters," and reinforce this. This is why intense focus during any task enhances the brain's ability to rewire itself in relation to that task. When we speak about starting a new life or resetting the way we live, we often think in abstract terms. Goal setting, changing environments, forming new habits. But at the biological level, it begins with what you see and how you engage visually with the world. Deliberately choosing what to look at helps direct internal state and sets the foundation for change. This is not metaphorical. If you begin your day staring at your phone, checking notifications, emails, or social media, you are conditioning your brain to become reactive and scattered. In contrast, if you take just a few minutes each morning to visually engage with the natural world, outdoor light, horizon views, distance, you are training your nervous system toward calm and alertness. This principle extends into every part of life. If you want to develop a new skill, the more attentively and deliberately you observe the details of that skill, whether it's a movement pattern, a language, or a workflow, the more effectively your brain will organize itself to support it. The simple act of narrowing your focus, minimizing distractions, and looking directly at the task at hand creates a cascade of neural responses that prime you for growth. That's why people who are able to concentrate deeply, even for short periods, tend to make faster progress in any area they train. But vision doesn't only affect focus. It directly impacts your emotional state through what's known as optic flow. When you move through the world and your eyes register the passing of visual scenery. Trees, buildings, people, your brain uses that visual information to calm your stress response. It's why taking a walk can reduce anxiety. This is not just psychological. It's because forward movement coupled with visual motion reduces activity in the amygdala, the part of the brain associated with fear and emotional threat. On the flip side, when your eyes are locked in place and you're staring at a screen or trapped in an enclosed space, your stress levels may rise. You may not even realize it, but your visual system is telling your brain that you're under threat, or at least under pressure. This is why incorporating visual breaks and natural light throughout the day is critical not just for eye health, but for emotional regulation and cognitive flexibility. If you're serious about resetting your life, you needed to train your visual attention with the same discipline as you train your body. Begin by taking control of how you start your day. Go outside early, even for 10 minutes, and get natural light in your eyes. This sets your circadian rhythm, boosts dopamine, and enhances your alertness in a natural, sustainable way. Then, during your work or creative sessions, deliberately narrow your focus and remove visual clutter. Use brief, focused bursts of attention. Around 90 minutes is optimal for most people, and then rest your visual system by looking far away, walking, or closing your eyes. This pattern of alternating visual focus and relaxation mirrors how the brain is wired to operate. It allows for periods of deep engagement followed by recovery, which in turn enhances learning and performance. And most importantly, it teaches your brain to associate effort with reward, focus with meaning, and action with outcomes. Vision is not just a passive sense, it's a steering wheel for your mind. Every time you direct your gaze, you are directing your brain's energy. You are telling it what to prioritize, what to remember, and what to change. Learning to master your visual attention is not a small habit. It is a foundational tool in the neuroscience of personal transformation. If you want to change your life, start by changing what you look at and how you choose to look. Most people wait for motivation to strike before they act. They believe they need to feel ready or inspired before they can begin making meaningful changes in their lives. But from a neuroscience perspective, This is a flawed approach. The brain doesn't rely on motivation to initiate change. It relies on consistency. In fact, motivation is often the result of action, not the cause. This understanding is critical for anyone looking to reset their life, especially when trying to establish new habits, routines, or identities. If you wait until you feel like it, you're surrendering your potential to a system that is biologically unstable. Motivation fluctuates based on mood, sleep, blood sugar levels, stress, and countless other variables. In contrast, consistent daily behaviors create stability in the brain and body. The human nervous system thrives on predictability. When you do the same behavior at the same time each day, your brain begins to anticipate it. This anticipation triggers the release of chemicals that support focus, drive, and resilience. One of the most powerful examples of this is dopamine, a neurochemical that reinforces behavior and increases the likelihood that you'll repeat it. While dopamine is often associated with pleasure, its more important function is motivation and goal-directed behavior. Every time you complete a task you've planned, no matter how small, your brain receives a dopamine signal that says, "Well done. Do this again." Consistency also plays a key role in shaping identity. Your self-image is not a fixed trait, it is a reflection of your actions over time. The more frequently you show up for yourself, the more evidence your brain gathers that you are someone who follows through. Over time, this shifts your self-concept from someone who wants to change to someone who does change. This process happens at a structural level in the brain. Repeated behaviors strengthen synaptic connections between neurons. These connections are like pathways, at first fragile and easy to forget, but over time they become stronger, faster, and more automatic. Eventually, the new behavior becomes your default. Another reason consistency is so effective is because it eliminates the friction of decision making. Every time you have to ask yourself, "Should I do this today?" you open the door to hesitation and distraction. But when a behavior becomes routine, like journaling every morning, exercising at a fixed time, or meditating before bed, it bypasses the need for willpower. It becomes automatic. This automation frees up cognitive resources and reduces mental fatigue, which makes it easier to stay on course over time. It's important to understand that consistency doesn't mean perfection. The brain is not damaged by missing a day or making a mistake. In fact, variability can enhance learning when managed correctly. What matters most is your average behavior over time. If you miss a workout or skip a morning routine, simply return to it the next day. This return is a powerful signal to the brain that the behavior still matters. This principle is often referred to as streak resilience. What makes a streak powerful is not how many days in a row you perform a habit, but how quickly you return to it after disruption. Furthermore, consistency acts as a form of psychological safety. When the world feels unpredictable or overwhelming, regular routines can ground you. They serve as anchors that keep you oriented in space and time. This is especially important during periods of transition, like starting over, healing from loss, or recovering from burnout. Consistent behaviors send a message to your nervous system. We are still in control. We can still build forward. Even something as small as making your bed, walking for 10 minutes, or drinking water after waking can serve as a stabilizing ritual. Over time, these simple practices accumulate and create massive change. Perhaps most importantly, consistent behavior opens the door for long-term plasticity in the brain. If you want to rewire your emotional responses, change your stress patterns, or build a stronger sense of purpose, it starts with small, repeated actions. The brain does not respond to dramatic one-time events as much as it does to patterns. If you meditate once for an hour, the effect may be minor. But if you meditate for 10 minutes every day, you'll see structural and functional changes in brain regions related to attention, emotion, and memory. In the end, the most powerful lesson is this: action precedes emotion. Doing the thing, especially when you don't feel like it, teaches your brain that effort matters. It reinforces the circuitry of discipline and shapes the chemistry of motivation. Waiting for motivation is a trap. Showing up every day, even with low energy, limited time, or doubt, is what rewires your brain for consistency, resilience, and transformation. If you want to reset your life, start with one behavior. Repeat it daily. Let your identity catch up to your actions. The brain will follow because that's what it was designed to do. If you want to reset your life and create lasting personal change, You must begin by regulating your internal state, and that starts with managing the biological systems that govern alertness, mood, focus, and recovery. The foundation of these systems lies in your circadian rhythm, a 24-hour biological clock that regulates when you feel alert, when you feel tired, and how your body coordinates energy, hormone release, and brain function across the day. The three most powerful tools for resetting this internal clock, and by extension, your life, are sleep, light, and physical movement. These are not optional wellness tips. They are core mechanisms through which the brain and body maintain balance, readiness, and growth. Every cell in your body has a circadian rhythm, but the central pacemaker, the master clock, is located in a region of the brain called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, ASCN, which resides in the hypothalamus. This clock is set primarily by light. When natural light enters your eyes in the early part of the day, it sends a signal to the SCN that tells every cell in your body it's time to be alert, focused, and active. This light exposure increases cortisol in the early morning, not as a stress hormone, but as a healthy signal of wakefulness, and helps regulate the timing of melatonin release later in the evening. When you consistently get bright light within the first 30-60 minutes of waking, your sleep improves, your focus sharpens, and your energy stabilizes. This single behavior can reset a dysregulated system faster than any supplement, therapy, or lifestyle change. Sleep is the second essential component. Without sufficient quality sleep, the brain cannot consolidate learning, regulate emotion, or maintain metabolic health. During sleep, particularly deep sleep and REM sleep, the brain clears out metabolic waste, strengthens neural connections related to memory, and resets emotional sensitivity. It also calibrates your ability to deal with stress and make rational decisions. A lack of sleep leads to heightened activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center, and reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex, which governs logical thinking and impulse control. This is why people who are sleep deprived often feel anxious, short-tempered, or unable to focus. Sleep deprivation doesn't just make you tired, it biologically alters how your brain functions, making meaningful behavior change far more difficult. In order to improve sleep, you must respect the relationship between your circadian clock and your behavioral cues. Going to bed and waking up at the same time each day, even on weekends, creates predictability in your brain's internal timing system. Avoiding bright light and screens in the 90 minutes before sleep, keeping your room cool and dark, and limiting caffeine intake after midday are all behaviors that signal to the brain that it's time to shift from alertness to restoration. If your goal is to reset your life, protecting your sleep window is not optional. It is the cornerstone of sustainable change. The third key is physical movement. Movement isn't just for physical health. It plays a vital role in regulating mental state and resetting the nervous system when you move, especially when you engage in rhythmic, low-intensity movement like walking, jogging, or cycling. Your brain increases the production of brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. This molecule supports the growth and survival of neurons and enhances plasticity, making it easier to learn and adapt. Physical movement also balances the autonomic nervous system by reducing sympathetic activity associated with stress and enhancing parasympathetic activity associated with calm and recovery. In particular, exercising early in the day has a synergistic effect on circadian alignment. It reinforces the light-based wakefulness signal and prepares the body for a more restful evening. Even short bouts of movement, such as a 10-minute walk in sunlight, can improve focus, elevate mood, and shift your internal biology toward a more optimal rhythm. Over time, regular movement routines help stabilize energy levels, reduce inflammation, and improve mental clarity, all critical factors for anyone trying to rebuild or reinvent their life. These three elements, sleep, light, and movement, form the biological platform for personal change. When they are aligned, the brain becomes more resilient, more focused, and more capable of adapting. When they are disrupted, everything becomes harder, motivation fades, mood swings increase, and effort feels unsustainable. If you want to reset your life, you must start by stabilizing your system from the inside out. The brain is not separate from the body, it is embedded within it. You cannot think your way into a new life unless your biology supports the thoughts you want to have. Consistency in managing these three factors sends a message to the nervous system that it is safe, predictable, and ready for growth. And once the brain feels safe and stable, it becomes far more capable of supporting the cognitive and emotional shifts that personal transformation requires. If you want a new life, you must first create the internal conditions that allow that life to grow. It starts with how you sleep, what you look at when you wake up, and how often you move your body. These are the levers of real, sustainable change. Stress is often portrayed as a negative force to be avoided, but from a neuroscientific standpoint, this is not entirely accurate. Stress in the right context and with the right management is not only useful, it's essential for growth. The key is learning how to control and direct your stress response rather than being overwhelmed by it. Your nervous system is designed to respond to challenges through activation of the sympathetic branch, often referred to as the fight or flight system. This response increases heart rate, sharpens focus, and mobilizes energy so that you can confront or escape a perceived threat. But in modern life, where threats are usually psychological, deadlines, relationship tension, uncertainty, the same response is often activated repeatedly without a proper outlet, leading to chronic stress. Chronic stress dysregulates the nervous system. It keeps the body in a persistent state of hypervigilance, impairs digestion, reduces immune function, and hinders cognitive flexibility. It also disrupts sleep and dampens neuroplasticity, the very process you need for learning and transformation. However, short bursts of controlled stress can actually enhance mental and physical resilience. This form of adaptive stress acts like a workout for the brain and body. When you intentionally place yourself in controlled stress-inducing situations, cold exposure, intense exercise, challenging cognitive tasks, you activate the same pathways but in a predictable and time-limited way. This teaches your system how to engage and disengage from stress more effectively. One of the most powerful tools for managing stress is deliberate physiological control. Your breath, in particular, provides a direct link between the conscious and unconscious parts of the nervous system. Fast, shallow breathing signals to the brain that something is wrong, increasing anxiety and heart rate. In contrast, slow, deliberate exhalations activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest mode, which helps calm the body and brain. A technique known as physiological sighing, which consists of a double inhale followed by a long exhale, has been shown to reduce stress quickly and restore equilibrium. This isn't a psychological trick, it's a biological reset mechanism rooted in how your respiratory and cardiovascular systems interact with your brain. Another critical element in managing stress is understanding how perception shapes physiological response. The brain doesn't just react to what is happening. It reacts to how you interpret what is happening. If you view stress as a threat, your body amplifies the stress response. But if you view it as a challenge, something that you are equipped to handle, your physiology responds more adaptively. This concept is known as cognitive reappraisal, and it has measurable effects on cortisol levels, heart rate, and performance. Training yourself to reframe stress from threat to challenge doesn't mean pretending things are easy. It means recognizing that effort is part of growth and that discomfort signals adaptation. Physical movement also plays a powerful role in stress modulation. Even short bouts of walking or moderate intensity exercise can reduce circulating levels of stress hormones and increase endorphins, which elevate mood and reduce pain. Importantly, movement also improves neurochemical balance, including serotonin and dopamine, critical players in motivation and mood regulation. Regular movement, especially outdoors, combines multiple stress, reducing mechanisms, visual motion, optic flow, exposure to natural light, cardiovascular activation, and rhythmic breathing. To train your stress response, you must expose yourself to controlled challenges. Cold exposure, such as brief cold showers or immersion, is one example that has been shown to increase norepinephrine and dopamine, sharpen focus, and build resilience. These stressors, when brief and predictable, build what's called stress tolerance. Over time, this improves your ability to stay calm and focused during real-life, uncontrolled stress. The key is that you are choosing the stressor. This element of control makes all the difference. Voluntary stress activates different neural pathways than involuntary stress and leads to greater resilience without the negative consequences of chronic overactivation. Sleep and recovery are essential in this process. You cannot train resilience without also training recovery. After a stressful event, whether it's a challenging workout or an emotionally taxing conversation, your body needs time to recalibrate. If you constantly layer stress on top of stress without building in space for recovery, your nervous system will eventually dysregulate. This is why integrating rest, mindfulness, non-sleep deep rest NSDR, or even quiet solitude into your daily life is not indulgent, it's essential. These practices lower sympathetic tone and restore balance, making it easier to return to baseline quickly after stress. The goal is not to eliminate stress, but to develop stress flexibility, the ability to shift between alertness and calm when needed. When you train your brain and body to enter stress with control and exit with intention, you become far more capable of navigating life's inevitable challenges. This is a core principle in resetting your life. Instead of avoiding difficulty, learn to use it. Controlled stress, when paired with proper recovery and mindset, becomes the very stimulus that pushes you to grow, adapt, and transform. It is not your enemy. It is your signal that something important is happening and that you are capable of handling it. In order to reset your life and build lasting change, it's essential to understand how habits form and how they can be rewired. The brain is fundamentally a predictive organ. It constantly looks for patterns, routines, and sequences it can automate to conserve energy. Every time you repeat a behavior, especially in the same context or environment, you reinforce a neural circuit associated with that behavior. Over time, these circuits become the default response, meaning the behavior becomes automatic. This is the essence of a habit, a learned neural loop involving a trigger, a behavior, and a reward. Changing these loops requires strategic attention to how they form, how they're reinforced, and how to replace them without relying solely on willpower. The most effective way to rewire habits is by understanding the principle of cue-driven behavior. Your brain is constantly scanning for cues in your internal and external environment. These cues, like a time of day, a location, or an emotional state, initiate habitual responses. For example, walking into the kitchen might cue snacking, or feeling anxious might cue phone scrolling. These behaviors are not random. They are part of a predictable system your brain has created to reduce decision-making effort. To break or build new habits, you must first become conscious of the cues that precede them. Awareness is the gateway to change. Once you identify a cue, you can begin to deliberately interrupt the existing loop and insert a new behavior that is more aligned with the life you want to create. However, it's not enough to simply try harder or rely on motivation to make that change. The key is to pair the new behavior with an immediate internal reward. This is how the brain learns, not just through repetition, but through association with positive outcomes. Every time you complete a habit, your brain evaluates whether it was beneficial, and it uses dopamine to mark that behavior as worth repeating. By generating a sense of accomplishment or pride after a behavior, even something as small as drinking water instead of soda, you teach your nervous system to prefer the new behavior over time. This is especially powerful when paired with positive self-talk or visual reinforcement. The feeling of, "I did it," is not just emotional, it's a neurochemical feedback signal that shapes habit formation. One of the most powerful strategies for rewiring habits is what's known as habit stacking. This involves attaching a new habit to an existing one. Because the brain loves routines and sequences, it will more easily adopt a new behavior if it's linked to something familiar. For example, if you already brush your teeth every morning, you could stack a 60-second gratitude practice right after brushing. Or if you have coffee at the same time each day, you could use that as a cue to review your goals or take 3 deep breaths. The existing habit acts as a trigger, making the new behavior more likely to stick. Over time, this becomes a seamless part of your day, and the brain rewires to include it in your identity. Environment also plays a crucial role in habit formation. The structure of your physical space either supports or sabotages your goals. If your phone is next to your bed, it will likely be the first thing you reach for. If healthy food is at eye level in the fridge, you're more likely to choose it. Small adjustments to your environment, like keeping workout clothes visible, turning off notifications, or removing digital distractions, can have an outsized impact on behavior change. This isn't about discipline, it's about design. Your environment should serve as a silent partner in your transformation, nudging you toward the behaviors you want to reinforce. Equally important is timing. The brain's ability to encode new habits is stronger at certain times of day, particularly during the early morning and just before sleep, when the brain is more plastic and receptive to new information. These windows of heightened neuroplasticity can be leveraged to install new routines. Engaging in deliberate behaviors during these times, such as journaling, meditation, or learning, creates deeper neural imprints and increases the likelihood that the behavior will persist. But no habit system is complete without flexibility and resilience. Life is dynamic, and habits will be disrupted. The key is to avoid an all-or-nothing mindset. Missing a day does not mean the habit is broken. What matters most is your ability to return to the habit quickly and without self-judgment. This teaches your brain that the habit is durable and important, even in the face of obstacles. Over time, this builds psychological momentum, a sense of trust in yourself, and a stronger identity around the behavior. Ultimately, the process of rewiring habits is not about forcing change. It's about aligning your brain's natural learning systems with the outcomes you desire. By understanding cues, leveraging dopamine, designing supportive environments, and practicing repetition with flexibility, you can replace disempowering habits with empowering ones. This isn't just behavior change, it's identity change. You're not simply doing different things, you're becoming someone different. And that's the real essence of resetting your life, not just changing what you do, but rewiring who you are through the habits you choose to repeat each day.